house us, to clothe us, to cure us, and to soothe our souls. So it's not news that we need to change status quo. We will hear many wise things from many of you gathered here tonight who are far more qualified than this country boy to suggest where we lead. And yet I know this to be true. No matter how effective we become in reducing and making more efficient our consumption of energy and other natural resources, the hard fact is that we in the developed world do not, through our actions alone, control the solution to the major problems we face. 2/3 of all biodiversity resides in the developing world. More than 20% of global carbon emissions result from the burning and destruction of tropical forests. New emergent diseases that threaten us come from the unsustainable utilization of wildlife in poor countries. Air quality in the U.S. will increasingly be determined by levels of desertification in Africa and pollution in China. While possibly a contributing factor, our consumption alone does not drive these problems. Instead, they generally reflect the yearning of a less developed world to escape poverty and attain a decent standard of living. If we stand on the sidelines, we cannot win the fight against destruction of creation. So while we rightly strive to lead more sustainable lives ourselves, we must not turn our back on the urgent challenge of helping those less fortunate improve their lives without destroying the very environment on which they and we depend. We need to devote orders of magnitude more attention to conserving the forest, fisheries, wetlands, and other great resources of the world, not just with money, but with experience, technical support, and political will. We were honored to have as the co-chairs of this gala two former presidents who have come to enjoy working together. I'd like to introduce a brief message from former President George Herbert Walker Bush.
I join my fellow honorary co-chairman, President Clinton, in welcoming you to the International Conservation Caucus Foundation Inauguration Gala. I want to congratulate the International Conservation Caucus in the U.S. House of Representatives and the Senate for bringing together such a fine, bipartisan, diverse group to address important conservation issues. I'm pleased to recognize the caucus co-chairs, Senator Brownback, Whitehouse, Snow, and Durbin, and Representatives Dix, Rogers, Tanner, and Royce. The caucus recognizes that we can achieve prosperity in this generation that does not harm future generations, and that we must establish a global conservation ethic that we can all embrace. This is something we can achieve together, but it will not happen without inspired leadership. I know my old friend Bill Archer well enough to know that with his leadership, the ICCF will make great progress toward this very important goal. I'm proud to support this historic collaboration and wish you all the very best.
As many of you are aware, President Bush and President Clinton have, when the matter is important, teamed together to provide awareness of critical issues. A short message from his friend and ours, President William Jefferson Clinton.
Welcome to the International Conservation Caucus Foundation's Inauguration Gala. I'm pleased to serve with my friend, former President Bush, as Honorary Gala co-chair. Hillary and I are disappointed we're unable to be with you this evening, but we're there in spirit. I know the audience we have an esteemed collection of leaders from both the public and private sectors with a genuine, real commitment for conservation. I'd like to particularly recognize Chairman Bill Archer, David Barron, members of the Advisory Council, Conservation International, the Nature Conservancy, Wildlife Conservation Society, and the World Wildlife Fund, and members of the ICCF boards and councils. And I'd like to congratulate Edward Norton, Maggie Bryant, and Chad Holliday, and DuPont for your awards this evening. I thank you for your commitment to this important cause. Those of you gathered in this room this evening represent an historic cross-section of individuals and organizations with a common mission to preserve our natural resources for this generation and for those who follow. It's encouraging to see leaders in industry gathered in the auditorium tonight with leaders in the international NGO community and United States policymakers. That's proof that we can look beyond our differences and work together to create and implement real solutions to the growing environmental crises. Like you, I believe America can and must take the lead in global conservation. Recognizing the lead between good natural resource management, the link between good natural resource management and economic development and poverty alleviation, we just have to assist developing nations to manage their resources better in order to grow their economies over the long run. By investing in our environment, we're investing in our people and their hopes and their dreams for the future. The ICCF, as an informal secretariat of the International Conservation Caucus in the U.S. House of Representatives and Senate, is working to educate policymakers and to assist them as they develop and strengthen environmental policies that affect us all. President Obama, Vice President Biden, and the 111th Congress will face the challenge of defining the role that America will play in the global environmental movement. But they won't do it alone. They'll have the great expertise and leadership available in the many and varied partners represented in this room tonight. Many of the challenges we face, from rising inequality to the spread of terrorism to global warming, can be solved or dramatically mitigated by better management of our natural resources. It is integral to any effort to sustain democracy, human rights, economic growth, and political stability in the developing world, where I do so much of my work. Many of the conflicts in the world today are due, at least in part, to increasing competition over dwindling natural resources. And as population continues to grow, those conflicts will grow too. We have to ask ourselves whether we're going to act now or risk the worst consequences of inaction. As I said, my foundation works on many of these issues. Our Clinton Climate Initiative is especially dedicated to making a significant difference in the fight against climate change by helping cities to use their resources effectively to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by building retrofits and closing landfills. And across all seven of our initiatives, we recognize the importance of sustaining the natural integrity of the regions where we work in order to stop the spread of HIV/AIDS or to expand economic opportunity. I applaud the efforts of the ICC and ICCF and all of you gathered tonight. I congratulate you on your individual and collective commitments and successes. And I urge you to build on your unique and highly effective collaboration with conservationists from the corporate, NGO, and government sectors to form even more partnerships and find even new ways to work together. We must create and implement real solutions that will protect our planet for our children and grandchildren. We can do it. Thank you.
Listening to both Presidents Bush and Clinton, I can think of no better way to bring home that message than to introduce a brief video put together for us tonight by our friends at the National Geographic Society.
Animals like these, in places like this, whether Democrat or Republican, public or private sector, this is what drew most of us to conservation in the first place. But as we've learned more about the complexities involved, we've come to realize that conservation is no longer just about saving these animals or these places. It's also about us, our security, and our ability to ensure our own survival.
Vitally important that we understand that there is a linkage between conservation. There is a linkage with the environment and national security, and we have to explore those linkages, or we fail. We fail in the 21st century with security, with the environment, with protecting the natural resources of this planet.
That link came into sharp focus recently in the Democratic Republic of Congo in Africa. July 2007, Virunga National Park. Under cover of darkness, a grisly execution takes place. 5 members of a family are killed, including its 500-pound patriarch, a silverback gorilla named Sinkwekwe. The gorillas were collateral damage in a battle over energy, caught in the crossfire of the illegal charcoal trade. Over 500,000 people live on the edge of Virunga Park, displaced by a series of wars that plague the region. Their ever-growing demand for charcoal used for cooking and heating is depleting the forest. The gorillas and the protected area where they live were simply in the way.
What you're looking at is populations living in desperation. When you're concerned about your survival, your very existence for today, you're going to mortgage your future. You're going to mortgage the future of the environment and of that country and of your own people simply because you are concerned about living.
Zakuma National Park in Chad. In 2007, this was the last stronghold for the savanna elephants of Central Africa's Sahel region. But turmoil in the nearby Darfur region spills over into the park. People in desperate short supply of resources opt to plunder what remains. In a bid for cash from the lucrative illegal ivory trade, they decimate the elephant herds. Displaced, poor, and desperate people, whether they are escaping civil strife or are pushed by a changing climate from their homes, present the biggest national security and conservation challenge we face.
If we are not concerned about these things that traditionally haven't been seen as security threats for us, if we allow these things to continue to grow and they turn into a security threat, it's too late. And so it's crucial to get to these challenges, to get to these problems at the root.
Poverty is at the root. It drives a destructive feedback loop. Displaced populations ravage resources, forcing more people off the land, which leads to greater pressure on the remaining resources.
We have to break that cycle, and we do that through, again, looking at things that we have not looked at necessarily. We can reach out to the conservation societies and say, how can we support your mission? Because through support of your mission, we succeed in our mission.
That kind of unprecedented cooperation is a solid source for hope. People will pay to see gorillas and elephants. Protecting resources like these is one step towards stabilizing the economy of people and a region. In the Central African nation of Gabon, President Omar Bongo turned to conservation NGOs like the Wildlife Conservation Society and World Wildlife, the private sector, and other governments to create and sustain a series of pristine national parks. Like so many leaders in Africa, he's decided to exploit his country's natural resources. But he's doing it without cutting down the forest. He is attempting to turn Gabon into what travel writers call the Costa Rica of Africa. And in the Costa Rica model, there's even more hope. By the 1980s, Costa Rica had lost more than 70% of its forest coverage. The government soon realized their path would lead to ruin. Working closely with NGOs like the Nature Conservancy and Conservation International, they are restoring their forests, regenerating their wildlife, and have created an economy principally based on ecotourism. At a time when many other countries have all but plundered their natural resources, the world craves a sustainable vision for the future. The same vision championed by the International Conservation Caucus Foundation. One where people reach across ideological lines, where the public and private sectors cooperate, and where international conservation NGOs continue to lead.
We do have the opportunity right now. It's an awakening within the American public. It's an awakening within our security architectures. It's a matter of an awakening within the conservation community and realizing that the world has systemically changed. We have to start looking at the world through the eyes of those most vulnerable. And I think that's where the solutions will be found.
In a world where conservation and security are inextricably linked, it's clear that only by working together can we give people hope. Keep our wildlife wild. Keep our home whole. And ensure the future of a world that sustains us all.
The important work done by the International Conservation Caucus is led by the co-chairs in the House and the Senate. Their leadership is reflected here today in tonight's program. I'd like to introduce our first co-chair from the House, Ed Royce, a ninth-term member from California, founding co-chairman of the ICC. Ed was chairman of the Africa Subcommittee for many years and was integral to the launch of the Congo Basin Forest Partnership spoken of in the NGS film just now. Ladies and gentlemen, Ed Royce.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you very much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for having Marie and me at this very inspiring conservation gala. And it's now my pleasure to introduce Mr. Jim Lentz, the president of Toyota North America. And he's been working for Toyota since 1982. He's long been a visionary with that firm. And Toyota has been an excellent partner in conservation and ever mindful of the future. Toyota has shown its leadership with the successful fielding of hybrid vehicles like the Toyota Prius. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Mr. Jim Lentz of Toyota.
Well, thank you, Congressman Royce, for that very kind introduction. Good evening, everyone. It's a great privilege to be here with all of you today, marking today's very historic occasion. And it's a pleasure to be with each and every one of you tonight. The inauguration of President Obama is a rebirth of hope, not just for our country, but for our planet as well. There is hope for peace, for prosperity, and for the preservation of our planet's wildlife and natural wonders. We at Toyota share those hopes, and we share your commitment to achieving them. To that end, we're working very hard to develop new vehicles that are fuel efficient and emissions free, to balance economic growth with the needs of society and the environment, and to help move us forward towards sustainable mobility. Toyota is proud to support the important work of the ICCF. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, I will introduce Mr. Mark Tercek. Mark is the president and CEO of the Nature Conservancy. Formerly, he was at Goldman Sachs, heading the firm's Center for Environmental Markets and its Environmental Strategy Group. The Nature Conservancy works now in more than 30 countries. It protects more than 117 million acres throughout the world. The Nature Conservancy has been a great partner in conservation. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mark Tercek.
Good evening, everyone. It's really great to be here at this wonderful event. First, let me salute the great leaders here who support conservation all around the world and in the U.S. Thanks for being here. Second, of course, let me thank the 1 million members of the Nature Conservancy. We have many members here tonight. Thanks to our members, we're able to do our work in all 50 states and in 30 countries around the world. Let me also recognize the many great conservation organizations that are here. At the Conservancy, we really value our work with you as we pursue our mission of conservation. And this is a good event to think about our mission. And as we think about it, to be sure it's protecting the natural environment, but it's also protecting the billions of people who rely on the natural environment for their livelihoods and indeed for their survival. So when we're at an event like this, we have lots of good food, good, safe, clean water to drink, etc. It's important to remember that a lot of the places where we work around the world, these basics that we take for granted, they're not, the people where we work don't always have access to these. And that's why it's so important that all of us here, conservation organizations, governmental leaders, corporate sponsors of conservation, NGOs, multilateral organizations, all of us must work together on conserving biological diversity and ecosystems in a way that protects the critical benefits of nature for people. And just to give you a quick example of what I mean, we're doing some interesting work in the Solomon Islands. We're helping local communities manage their marine protected areas. But what we found is there are a whole host of benefits that result. First, we found fishing improved. Second, food security improved. Third, tourism soared. Then we did a very careful survey of 1,200 households, and we found human welfare really improved. In fact, per capita income doubled. So this can really work. Conservation linked to human well-being really can work. But for it to work, we need great champions of conservation. We need champions who will speak up on behalf of global conservation. So it's really an honor for the Conservancy to be here tonight and honoring people like President Bongo of Gabon, CEO Chad Holliday of DuPont, Ed Norton Jr., whose personal passion for conservation has made an enormous difference around the world. Of course, I also want to thank and recognize the co-chairs of the Caucus and other members of Congress who are here tonight, who have shown such exceptional focus and dedication to pursuing conservation many miles away from our lives here in the U.S. We stand at a point when there are many threats to the environment, both here and abroad. And it's also a time when our society faces many great challenges. But from my perspective, it's also a time of great urgency. People really seem to get what our mission is all about. So with the support of this great group tonight, I'm filled with great optimism about the cause of conservation going forward. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. Have a great evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Representative John Tanner. He's a 11th term congressman from the 8th District of Tennessee. Ladies and gentlemen, Congressman John Tanner.
Thank you all very much. It's a pleasure for Betty Ann and I to be among the corporate and NGO leaders of conservation, not only in the United States, but around the world, around the globe. The ICCF has recently added a new partner, and they have undertaken a leadership role at an early date. It is a real pleasure to introduce Mr. Stefan Jacoby, President and CEO of Volkswagen America. Volkswagen, always a leader in the automotive industry, has recently introduced the new clean diesel Tercek, which they were gracious enough to loan to the Gala. Their leadership in conservation is truly an inspiration. Please help me in welcoming Mr. Stefan Jacoby from Volkswagen.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, Congressman Tanner, for that very kind introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, Volkswagen Group of America would like to congratulate the International Conservation Caucus Foundation for hosting such an extraordinary event, and we would like to thank for the privilege of partnering with such an impressive and powerful group of corporate and NGO leaders. Volkswagen Group is a global automotive manufacturer, and we share the ICCF's commitment to achieve market-oriented solutions in conserving and sustainable worldwide. We are also very thrilled to be able to work with so many congressional leaders like Congressman Tanner, who make up the Congressional International Conservation Caucus. Thank you for recognizing our advanced clean diesel vehicles, which brought some of you here this evening with all the traffic. Our work on clean diesel is just a small part of our effort to protect the environment. Our commitment to sustainable mobility covers the entire lifespan of a car, from the earliest stages of the manufacturing processes to the vehicle's final trip to the salvage yard. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the entire team at Volkswagen, we would like to add our congratulations to those environmental leaders in conversation being recognized this evening. Mr. Chad Holliday, Chairman and CEO of DuPont, and of course, Ed Norton. Thank you very much and enjoy the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Stefan. It's now my duty and pleasure to introduce Anheuser-Busch and Mr. Dave Peacock. Anheuser-Busch demonstrates its conservation commitment every day in every facility and community in which it does business. Since the year 2000, it has won over 150 awards for waste reduction, water conservation, education, recycling, and wildlife habitat protection. Please extend a warm welcome to Mr. Dave Peacock and our friends at Anheuser-Busch.
Thank you, Congressman Tanner. Good evening, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the Budweiser at your table. Anheuser-Busch salutes the work of the International Conservation Caucus Foundation in promoting global conservation. We have a term in our company called act like an owner, and I think all of us need to act like an owner of this planet. We own this planet. We own it for our children and for their children, and that is something that we are very passionate about. Our goal is to be the best beer company in a better world, and we are proud to partner with the ICCF. It's also an honor to be here among public and private leaders actively supporting international conservation. We congratulate the ICCF on their 3rd annual Gala, tonight honoring the 44th president and the new administration. We hope you enjoy the evening. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming the President and CEO of the World Wildlife Fund, Mr. Carter Roberts. Prior to joining the fund, Carter established new programs in Latin America for the Nature Conservancy and strategic planning efforts that chartered the organization's aggressive growth strategy of the past decade, leading to the Massachusetts chapter as state director. The World Wildlife Fund is the world's largest independent conservation organization with over 5 million supporters worldwide, working in more than 90 countries, supporting 100 conservation and environmental projects around the world. Carter, thank you for being here tonight.
Good evening, and thank you for being here on behalf of WWF's 5 million members worldwide. It is a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to be with you. I love maps. My children love maps. We can sit around and look at maps all night long. My children learn maps in school, and they learn to look at countries. They learn the countries. They learn the capitals. And over time, we begin to look at maps, and we think about forests, and we think about oceans, and they learn those names. And over time, we began to look at maps